It's great to see all of you here today. And I'm here to introduce your next speaker on financial literacy, Nicole Strauser. Nicole is the Vice President of Beneficiary Services for Prudential. With more than 23 years of experience, she's responsible for delivering final promises for group insurance, individual life insurance, annuities, and retirement customers. I know there are probably a lot of foreign terms to you, but maybe Nicole will be enlightening you a little bit. Prior to her current role, Nicole held various roles across Prudential's retirement organization, including the contact center, client services, and all back office operations from money in and money out to complex record keeping. She currently sits on the board of Leadership Northeast, a local nonprofit focused on creating servant leaders in the community. Nicole also serves as the Prudential Executive Site Lead for the Scranton office and the executive sponsor of the Scranton Pride BRG. She received a bachelor's degree from Marywood University, and she is a Series 6, 99, and 26 registered principal. So it's my pleasure to welcome Nicole. Let's give her a round of applause.
Okay, I think I can move around, right? Okay. So we're going to talk about investing in your future and the power behind financial literacy. And so I know the title might sound a little boring, but I think what's really important is that you all have the opportunity to embrace your financial identity that's going to follow you throughout your life. And so there's some important things that you need to consider, and decisions that you'll need to make over the coming years, and that will have an impact that will last a lifetime. And so we'll talk about those today. So you might be looking and saying, what is this? Typically, when people talk about success, and I know there's a lot of pressure, right, when you're in school and you're trying to figure out what you want to be as a grown-up, and you're trying to think through all your options, people typically talk about success looking like a straight line, right? You're going up. But in reality, success has twists and turns. That doesn't make what you achieve less successful, but it is different. And if you ask many people, they're still trying to figure out what they want to be when they're a grown-up, including myself. And I've been with the company for 23 years, held a lot of roles, and I'm still looking at what's next. Another way to say it is people think that progression in life is a straight line. Going up, climbing a ladder. But in reality, you have to go sideways. You might try different opportunities, like right now in high school, you're looking at what kind of classes you want to take. Are you taking AP classes? Are you volunteering? Are you in clubs? These are all different opportunities that are going to add to your tool belt to help you to whatever your final destination is. And really, the trick is there is no final destination. I remember thinking about what I wanted to be when I grew up. I knew I wanted to go to college. I was the first person to go to college in my family and the first person to graduate. And with that was a lot of pressure on what I was going to be when I grew up, how that was going to come into play, and how that would help me be successful. But I will say, you may start out in one, thinking you're going to do one thing, and you may change your majors, you may change schools, you may get into the workforce, and you can work a couple years in one area and decide to completely change your industry. So don't feel like you're locked in. You're always going to be a continual learner. I have Nadine here, who's a financial advisor, and if you have any really detailed questions, or if she wants to chime in, she will. But we were literally just talking about what's next. What are some other things that I might want to try, and how do I make sure that I'm set up financially to be able to do those things? So here we're going to talk about 3 of the most critical factors when you're talking about financial literacy and owning your own financial identity. So it's not something that happens to you, you're actually in control. So we're going to talk about the importance of credit, the importance of creating a budget, and the power of compounding today. Those are 3 things that you will need throughout your life and that you will need to understand to continue to make an impact. So I have up here a quote talking about financial literacy and talking about how it's not just about knowing this information, it's also about making critical decisions in your life. And those decisions could be something as small as, do I want to pack my lunch? Do I want to use a reusable water bottle, right? Am I going to bring my Stanley? Or am I going to buy water? Am I going to buy lunch? Or it could be as big as, am I going to go to an in-state college? Or am I going to go to an out-of-state college that the tuition can be higher? Are you going to go to a community college? Are you going to look at a 2-year degree? Or are you going to look at a 4-year degree? Those are all questions that really look at needs versus wants, and we'll talk about those as we talk through why those decisions are important. So we're going to talk about your credit score and why your credit is key to your future. So I'm going to ask a couple questions first before we get started. How many of you have a savings account or a checking account? Okay. How many of you have a credit card? Okay. How many of you know your credit score? So when we think about credit score, to keep it really simple, your credit score is a 3-digit number between 300 and 850. It provides a quick estimate of your credit risk based on your credit report. Your credit report is basically a summary of your credit history. There's ways to build your credit, and there's ways that you can hurt your credit. A person's credit is typically measured through the credit score, and the most common one is your FICO score, which is named after the software developer Fair Isaac Incorporation. FICO scores are provided by lenders by 3 major credit reporting agencies: Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. They help lenders create the risk of whether they should extend credit or loan money to people. Your credit score uses 5 categories: your payment history, amount owed, length of history, new credit, and credit mix. The lowest score, a poor score, is 300 to 579, while an excellent score is 800 to 850. Does anybody know what the single biggest factor is on your credit? Late payment. Yes. So late payments, missed or late payments, can remain on your credit report for 7 years. So one missed or late payment can continue to follow you for 7 years. Now, when I was going to college, again, I was the first person going to school. Immediately when I got on campus, there was all of these, get a free t-shirt, sign up for a credit card, and I did. I signed up for a credit card. I was working part-time to pay for my living expenses, and I remember using my credit card. And I used my credit card to buy milk, to buy cereal. I also used it to go out, and I didn't do a really good job understanding what those late payments meant or how that interest could quickly grow and how to manage it. And it actually took me several years. I want to say I was able to spend $3,000, and it probably took my first 7 years to get it paid off because of the interest that kept on accumulating. And when I first graduated, I wasn't making a salary where I can pay my student loans, my credit card, and my living expenses and bring that credit card down. So those decisions you make today will follow you. I'm sorry, I'm going to pause one more minute and finish talking about credit. Why do you think your credit score is important? What are things that you need your credit score and good credit to do? Shout them, right? Buy a house, buy a car, get a loan. Do you know your credit score can impact you getting a job? So if you want to work in the financial industry, and to be a licensed professional, you will need to have good credit. You will have to pass a credit check. If you want to serve on certain boards, there are careers that will look at your credit before you can actually enter that industry. So is that surprising? Because I'll tell you, it was surprising to me when I started at Prudential and they said they were going to run a credit check. I think I was so nervous. I'm like, am I still going to be hired? Because I knew I had credit card debt. I was paying on it, but I didn't really understand what my score was. You are all empowered to be able to get your credit score, your credit report for free. So from those 3 companies that run your credit report, you are eligible to ask for those. And something that is new, and so I do have 3 children, something that is new that it happened to my family is someone tried to open a claim, a worker's claim, unemployment claim for my husband. his company called him and said, hey, I thought you were still working, right? You're working today, you're in the office, how come you're filing for an unemployment claim? And so we found out there was identity fraud. And we started researching the identity fraud, and we were told that our kids' identities could be stolen, and that people could be using their social security number and racking up credit card debt. And so I would challenge all of us, regardless of our age, because I know Jess and others are in the back, knowing your credit score and having your credit report at least annually will help you be able to stay on top and make sure no one is opening any accounts in your name. And if you are under 18, I would say put this on your note to take home. You can actually ask your parents to freeze your credit where people can't open any new accounts. And you'll get I think it's a password, where if you do go to a bank, you could provide the passcode and then it would be released so that they can run a credit check. I was really surprised about that. I didn't know that I had to protect the credit of my kids that are 6, 10, and 11. So I would just put that out there, that's an important thing to do, because your credit, again, is going to follow you. If we look at American credit card debt, it's doubled in the last 10 years, growing from $72 billion to $143 billion. And 80% of graduating college seniors have credit card debt before they even have a job. So when we talk about getting onto campus and the free t-shirt and sign up, you can get a gift card for American Express, you really want to think about those. And there's some things that you should think about when you're thinking about that is there an annual fee? Because a lot of the credit cards that are rolled out to students will have an annual fee that you'll get charged every year. They can have a high interest rate, late fees. So those are something that you'll want to check before you actually move forward with opening a credit card.
Hey, Nicole. Nicole mentioned the ability to get a copy of a free credit report. Each of those 3 agencies will allow you to get one from them each year. So you may want to spread that out from each of those 3 agencies, maybe one in the first quarter, one in the second quarter, and one in the fourth quarter. And one of the agencies she mentioned, Experian, they were hacked back in 2017. So 148 million Americans had their identity stolen. So you could go onto that crediting agency, and if you have any credit that's out there, you can see whether or not you were part of that exposure and what you need to do to begin to protect your credit as well.
Thank you, Nadine. Any questions on credit scores before we keep going? I just want to make sure if you have questions, don't be afraid to ask. Nadine and I will try to cover them. All right, so the next topic, and we know how important our credit score is, so how do we keep it healthy? One of the important things is actually creating a budget and budgeting for what you want to spend and what you want to save. And so I'll just share some statistics. About 25% of all people take time to budget and lay out their finances. Only 25%, and that's regardless of age. 58% of people say they would set up a budget if they knew how to do it correctly. 59% of adults live paycheck to paycheck. 29% of American adults don't save enough of their income at all in terms of retirement savings, an emergency fund, or anything else. And it's not about just setting it and forgetting it. It's important, once you set a budget, to make sure that you're revisiting it, and looking at your spending plan and adjusting as necessary. You need to plan for expenses, identify what you need to cut as far as spending. You need to make sure you're spending wisely, and that you're saving for your future goals. And we're going to talk about these things in more detail. And if you focus on budgeting now, because how many of you have a job, currently work? Or get an allowance or money that you manage? Okay. So if you want to make sure that you're using that money to the best of your ability, you need to have a budget that will help you identify where you want those funds to go, and then go back and revisit it and say, is that how you're actually using the money? I know I set goals for myself, and I can easily get off track by stopping at Starbucks, or I'll go to Target for one or two things and end up coming out with much more. And now my oldest daughter, she's 11, we go to Ulta and Sephora, and we're getting Drunken Elephant, and I think that might be it, and a few other items, right, girls, that she's looking for, and I'm trying to make her use money that she's been given, so that she understands how much she has to spend and what she can't spend. And we talk about spending, saving, and donating, right? Because giving back is also a critical part to that budget. So there's a couple different ways you can look at budgeting. There's pay yourself first, where you actually pay yourself in a certain amount or percentage, and you put that into savings. Then whatever's remaining can be spent how you choose and according to your expenses. There's zero-based budgeting, where you want to account for every dollar in your budget. And this method operates on the idea that when you subtract out your expenses from your income, the result is zero. There's a 50-30-20 rule, and this is where 50% is for necessary expenses, and we're going to talk about what those are. 30% are for other expenses, and 20% for savings. And you can adjust those percentages to fit your needs depending on how much income you're bringing in or what your savings goals are. And so before I go on, Nadine, anything you want to add before we talk about expenses?
The budget that you're talking about, remember this, the budget is a cornerstone to your wealth. Anybody that I work with, they have a budget. I see some people in the back. Budget is your friend. And when Nicole said pay yourself first, you need to put a line item on your budget of how much you're going to pay yourself, and that's your savings. So the cornerstone of all wealth begins with the budget.
Yeah, and if we think about, if you listen to the keynote speaker this morning, Lauren talked about how we matter, right? We have to make time. You're going to make time for exercise. You're going to make time for getting sleep. You're going to make time for making sure you're eating healthy. I would add this as something that's critical to making sure you're doing everything you need to be successful in the future. Okay. So types of expenses. I'm going to move over here so I can see a little better. All right, so types of expenses. The first expense, can anyone guess what some of your expenses, can you share what some of your expenses are? Yes. Gas? Groceries? Rent? Okay, great. So the first category of expenses is your fixed expenses. These are going to be set, they don't change month to month, such as your rent, your cell phone bill, your car insurance. You're going to have variable expenses, such as groceries, fast food, movies, concert tickets, and they're going to change from month to month. And then you have unexpected expenses. They're not part of your monthly plan, such as emergency medical bills, car repairs, anything that's going to come out unexpected. And we talked about having an emergency savings fund. This is what an emergency savings fund is for. It's to save for something that's unexpected. And I can share, I got a flat tire on Wednesday. I was driving, I got a flat tire, I had to pull my car over. I'm on the highway. Luckily, my car insurance actually covers roadside assistance. I did not know that. First call was to my dad. Don't tell my husband that, but the first call was to my father. And I'm like, Dad, I got a flat tire, what do I do? And he said, well, call, he goes, you don't have AAA? I said, no. He said, call your insurance. So I got my insurance card out of the glove box and I called. And right on the insurance card, there's actually a phone number that you can call for roadside assistance if you have a claim. So I called. I mean, technology is just so awesome these days. It actually pinpointed for them where I was, and they opened a claim, and they were able to send out a tow truck driver who put out the cones and changed my tire, and I put my spare on, but I did have to bring it to the garage. Got to the garage, the one tire, that was flat, they couldn't repair, but my other tires also needed to be replaced. And so while they had the car up there, they took the tires off and they said, oh, you also need new brakes. And so $1,200 later, I'm now done with the flat tire. And so that's what we talk about when we talk about unexpected expenses and having an emergency fund, and making sure that we're planning. For many families across the country, something like that could mean that their rent's not being paid, their mortgage isn't paid, or maybe they can't get their medicine. So it's really important to think about how you're going to put away money for unexpected things and expected things. Nadine, I'll pause. Anything on expenses?
Oh, yeah, those, the emergency fund, there's a rule of thumb, and once you complete your budget, you're going to know what your total expenses are for the month. And at a minimum, you should have 3 months worth of expenses in a savings account, a money market, some type of an investment you could readily get access to those funds. So 3 months would be the minimum. Some people may need to have 6 months worth of expenses inside of an emergency fund. So now we start to see that the budget's real important because it tells us how much we need in emergency savings. If you are in a one household income, you should have 6 months worth of emergency expenses. If your household has 2 sources of income, that's where we come up with 3 months worth of emergency expenses.
Thank you, Nadine. So we talked about you're doing your budget, you know your income, now you know your expenses. What are you saving for? So what are your types of savings goals? Is it an emergency fund? Is it a college savings plan, whether it's to go towards your tuition, whether it's to go for your room and board, or for you to live on while you're at school? Is it for short-term purchases, right? So maybe you need a new cell phone. Maybe you need a new water bottle or something that's you're easily able to save for. Or is it a long-term purchase? Are you buying a car? Are you are you saving up to have a down payment for your rent, right? Because you want to live off campus when you move out. This is the different types of goals that you'd want to sit down and set for yourself. You'll know what's important. It could be a vacation, right? It could be your senior year vacation, and you're going to pay for that vacation. So again, you need to sit down and think through what those things you want to save for. And as you start to budget, it really will be an eye-opener. It'll enforce you to understand that your money is limited and that you're going to have to make some tough decisions and decide what's number 1 priority and what's number 2 priority. You don't have to do it alone. I put on here some of the links, some apps that you can use. So there's Copper, YNAB, Mint. These tools are all apps. These tools are all apps. Copper is a banking app specifically for teens. It helps you learn about budget categories and set savings goals. Mint is an all-in-one financial management tool, tracks incomes, expenses, and offers you personalized budget tips. And then YNAB, it's short for You Need a Budget. I did not know that until I looked it up. This app focuses on zero-based budgeting principles, so how every dollar has a purpose. And I also put up there, some of these apps will allow you, they're free, but if you want certain features, you would have to pay for it. Some of the apps do require you to be 18 unless you have a parent sign up and you can connect to your parents' accounts. So you can research these and see which ones you like, which ones fit for you, but there's also just good old budgeting tools. So up top is a template that I pulled off. I do have resource links at the end of this, and I'll make sure it's available to all of you. But there was some that were specifically designed for teens, and you can get a simple budgeting template that goes over your income, your expenses, and your savings goals, and then what you have left. And just because you say what your estimated income is for the month, if you're working part-time, your hours may change, you may have to take time off, and you may not be getting paid for those. So then you can actually also track your actual, right? So you want to have what you forecasted, right? Here's what I think I'm going to make this month, but here's what I actually made this month. And here's what I thought I was going to spend this month, but here's what I actually spent. And I will say some of these apps, and depending on your credit card, my credit card will actually show me where I spent my money, and sometimes it's a little scary. DoorDash, I was on my naughty list because I definitely, during the summer, tend to DoorDash for family, kids, and that chunk went way up. It will show you what you're spending your money on. And so as we talked about the importance of looking at your budget, you can see, were you on track? Did you overspend? Did something unexpected come out? And that's how you can balance it. So I'll pause there. Any questions on apps, templates?
There's a question in the app, actually.
Sure.
So you're giving us some great advice, and as you know, we're all teenagers. But give me a realistic age from when I should start taking all of this really seriously.
All right, we're going to get to that. Okay, so that is actually, so in 2 slides, I'm actually going to show you by dollars why this is important. Okay, and building your credit, having no credit is just as bad as having bad credit. So no credit will also stop you from getting loans, getting rent, getting an apartment. These are all things that I'd say if you can start practicing now and making smart decisions and budgeting, it will make it easier as you get older. I mean, I'll share, I'm from a working class family, and I did work throughout high school, but I didn't save money. My paycheck went to my family to pay the house bills. And so when I went to school, it was really easy for me to make choices to put things on the credit card because I didn't have the money. But if I had stopped to think about, okay, this $5 pizza I ordered, yes, at the time it was like $5. I'm aging myself, but this pizza we got was going to end up costing me, let's say, $300 because I didn't pay it off. I probably wouldn't have bought the pizza. Right? I probably would have I would have went to the Commons and got lunch there, which was already paid for, right? Instead of ordering out and having to pay myself. I didn't make those choices because I didn't know. I didn't know about this. I didn't know that my credit score was going to stop me from getting a job potentially. So I think it's important. Knowledge is key, right? And so as you grow up and you have different experiences, empowering yourself with knowledge to be in control, that's critical, right? No one can take that away. If you take time to invest in yourself or learn about something, that's never going to be time wasted. It's always going to pay off in the long run. So I will show you, though, if you don't start saving, specifically what that means. So compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it. And I did want to change this to she, but I felt bad because it's a quote from Albert Einstein. So does anybody know what compound interest is? Okay. So let's start with the definition. So simple interest is calculated when you use the principal amount that you borrowed and you don't include any interest on that, right? So if you borrowed $5,000, you're going to be paying $5,000 back, and there's an interest rate that you're going to be charged, but it's not going to accumulate on top of that interest. I'm going to explain compound interest. Compound interest simply means you're earning interest on both your original saved money and the interest you earn on that original money. So if you put $5 in today and you earn $1 of interest, now it's $6, you're going to earn interest on the $6, not just the $5 you originally put in, okay? So it's compounding. You're adding that interest into the base and accumulating more interest on top of it, okay? That's compounding interest at the simplest form. I'm going to show you what that means. Okay. So, assuming 7.75% increase going forward, how much would you need to invest each week to become a millionaire by age 65? Okay, so this might surprise you, and I'm going to just share that I did get, this slide was shared with me through a not-for-profit that does financial literacy for teenagers in New York City. And so this slide I felt like was so powerful for me, and I wish somebody had this conversation when I was younger, but lucky for me, when I was in college, I started working at Prudential and was surrounded by some pretty powerful people that I admired, and they gave me advice. And I started putting into my retirement plan when I was 21 is when I started at Pru. So I started saving at 21. So very powerful. I feel like this is a secret that is sometimes held back from people, even though it's in our public view. Everyone talks about it, but we don't always understand it. All right. So if you start when you're 18, you'd have to contribute $45. When you're 19, $48. Look at that jump. I'm going to be 45 in July. So if I were to start now, I'd have to save $418 a week to get to the same savings goal if I started when I was 18. So how much did it cost me out of pocket to do that? How much did delaying cost me out of pocket? I'm just going to pause there, and I'm going to ask, are you surprised? Are you shocked? Is this something you knew or understood? Is this helpful? I see heads nodding. Okay. All right. So when we talk about compound interest, this is why it's important. So whether this is savings or it's credit, right, and you're spending money on your credit card, if you're paying the minimum, what's going to happen is the interest keeps getting added onto your balance, and now you're paying the interest rate on what you bought plus the interest. And that can grow so quickly and become out of hand. And that's how people really get themselves into a position where they have bad credit or they're missing credit payments or even filing bankruptcy. So if we think about this, if you leverage the power of compounding, every 10-year increment of waiting actually costs you nearly twice as much money to save the same goal amount. Okay. Nadine, I'll just ask if you have anything to add on compounding.
Yeah, so the slide that Nicole utilized about Albert Einstein, when I teach financial wellness to adults, that is always on my slide as well, because the power of compounding cannot be lost at all. So if we understand that the fastest way to build wealth, to get to our goals, whether it's buying a house, buying a car, getting to retirement, is through some type of a vehicle that will allow you to do some compounding along the way. So I think the question that came up in the app was, when do we start? When is this really important to us? And earlier, Nicole asked a question, and that was, how many of you have a job? So let's see those hands up again. Almost everyone in here has a job. And because you have a job, that's perfect time to start listening to all this and to start beginning your journey of savings. And if you start at $45 a week, you see the numbers up there, or even $25 a week. $25 a week, that's $100 a month. And a simple 4% compounding rate, in 25 years, you'll have over $55,000 in an account. So now you have to ask yourself, do I spend $25 a week on Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts? Where am I dropping $25? And can I put that back to come up with $25? So while our slide says 45, we could still do a little lower number. Here we dropped it down to $25, and you could still have a good pocket of savings. So almost everybody raised their hands. You're working, you could open up accounts and start the savings. And the fun part about it is you may want to invest in stocks, and you and your friends could do a little bit of competition with whose stocks are doing a little bit better. So there's another avenue that you can work with, and maybe you're in a stock club at school, and you could put that to work in your individual accounts now that you're working and saving a little money.
So I just wanted to touch on some important data that you can look up as you make some important decisions. So when you graduate, you have a number of choices: college, trade school, military. Are you going to just get employed immediately out of school, or are you going to go to technical college, right? So is college right for you? If you're thinking about college, there are some things. There's obviously things that you want to consider. Is it a school that you love? Are there the clubs that you like? Does it offer the major? But if I'm thinking about it from a financial perspective, there's things to consider. So in 2023, what do you think the average full-time student at a four-year college spends on tuition, fees, room and board for the year? Just to throw out a dollar amount.
$44,000.
Okay, anybody else? So in 2023, the average was 31,000. Okay? Some of the stats that you should look at are, you want to look at their financial aid packages. They actually, all colleges publish what their financial aid package percentages are and how much they give in financial aid. So you can see, are they a school that gives out a lot of financial aid? Are they a school that gives out high academic scholarships? Are they a school that gives out high sports scholarships? And depending on where you fall, you then can look at their acceptance rates and see, is that a school that would not only accept you, but that you would be in a top portion that you would potentially get a lot of merit, whether it be financial aid, scholarships, etc. The other thing you want to look at is their acceptance rates, their graduation rates, right? If you're going to pay all this money for school, are the people that actually enroll, do they graduate? Then look at their percentage of employment after graduation. From a financial perspective, you want to think about location. Is it in a cost of living area that's a high cost of living? Is it in a low cost of living? Are you able to live at home? Are you able to live in the dorm? Do you have to live off campus? Is it in-state versus out-of-state? Because those will impact tuition. 55% of today's U.S. college grads have debt. The average cost of a degree, depending on what school you receive, is $25,000 to over $218,000. And that's according to the Education Data Initiative, right? So you can look this data up. I'm going to ask this group a question. How long do you think it takes students to pay off their student loans on average? Shout it out.
20 years.
It's 20 years. So I know we all think that we won't be in that position, but I will share it took me about 20 years to pay off all of my student loan debt. So that's why it's important when you're deciding about college that you're thinking about the financial aspect as well as the other aspects around their courses, their materials, what clubs they have, is it in a location you like? There are financial perspectives to that. And there's also, if you're looking at employment, you think college might be something you're interested in, I'll just share my own experience. When I started at Prudential, I was still in school. So I was going to Marywood University, and I ended up applying to Prudential, and I got hired in their contact center. Well, Prudential has a tuition reimbursement program. So they actually paid for my senior year. Afterwards, I was like, I wish I looked at local employers in the industry I wanted to be in that could potentially pay for my career, pay for my college tuition. So if you are thinking about other ways, take some stock, look into what your field is, and if there are employers that have programs that would help you. Because the college debt, student loans, those missed payments, that will follow you. Remember, those missed payments are going to follow you for 7 years. All right, I'm just going to do a time check.
We have 3 minutes.
Okay. I'm going to just touch quickly. These are just some things that are going on in the marketplace, the workplace. I thought I would bring them up. I think they're pretty impactful from a trend perspective. So remote work. Think about when you grow up, what you want to do. Is remote work something that's really important to you? Look at the career you're looking at, and is that going to be an opportunity? It's definitely where the marketplace is going, and it's a mix between hybrid, fully remote, and then fully on-site. There's a big focus on employee well-being. So as you start to think about your careers or think about employers, you will be able to look at what benefits they offer. Not just, there's typical ones like paternity leave, maternity leave, health care, but a lot of companies are offering other employee well-being programs. Like Prudential has a wellness benefit where we get dollars that we can use towards exercise equipment, anything for your own health and well-being. So when you're researching companies, you'll want to find out what they offer. There is a focus on neurodivergent workforce, and so I think this is important. If we think about what jobs exist today and what jobs are going to exist tomorrow, they're going to be very different. And one of the things that is different is the neurodivergent population. They're very hired. Right? So there's a lot of people that either are on the spectrum, they have dyslexia, apraxia, and the marketplace now, the talent marketplace, is trying to focus on how do we get those talents from everyone and make an inclusive environment where everyone can be successful. And then robotics and AI. we heard this morning there was some conversation about robotics and how often we hear AI. It was in the emotional intelligence room today. And when they were talking about it, this isn't something new, but it is really impactful. There's a lot of technology now that can do speech analytics. So we have a contact center. So people call in. I can pick a word, and I can search through the calls and see how many people are calling and talking about that. So when there's something going on in the marketplace, let's say, and Taylor Swift says something about NASDAQ or about a company she's investing in, I can look it up and see if people are calling about it. So there's a lot of power behind AI and robotics, so that's definitely a growing field. And then gig workforce. Have you guys heard about gig workforce? Because this is going to be something that's going to be impactful to you as you guys get older. A lot of people are looking at gig work instead of full-time work. So a definition of a gig worker is a freelancer and independent contractor. So it's a person who works in a gig economy. So gig workers work on short-term projects, right? So if you want to be a designer, an interior designer, you can be a gig worker and you could just accept jobs that you want. So instead of having a full-time salary, you work by job. And there's a lot of gig opportunities where if you're a graphic designer, you can do the same thing, right? You can pick jobs and you can freelance. And that's going to be a growing impact in our workplace. And then sustainability. A lot of companies are looking at how we help sustain the environment and how we reduce our carbon footprint. And so there is a big focus on careers and creating sustainability. And so again, something you might want to think about. Okay, parting thoughts. I'm not gonna go through everything here, but I am gonna ask you, check your credit score. Don't forget to ask about your free credit report. Know that success isn't a straight line. And be thoughtful about where you're spending your money. You're working hard to earn those dollars. Be thoughtful and start saving as soon as you can. That first paycheck, $10, $5, that's where you're going to have power in the long run. So that's why it matters today. And remember that these things, the decisions you make today, can help you be successful in the future. Thank you.